Hello and welcome back to Super Wall Jump, the video games podcast where we talk to content creators and video game developers and everything in between. Today with me I have
Jaymo from the Old SwitchAroo. How you doing, Lawson?
I'm doing pretty good. What are we going to be talking about today, Jaymo?
We are going to be talking about. I'm gonna sound like a shill right off the bat, but we are going to be talking about Nintendo Switch Online, the best deal in gaming that just can't do anything right.
And are you getting paid by Nintendo to plug this?
I freaking wish. You could consider this a plug for my show. I do a gaming podcast all about Nintendo Switch Online called the Old SwitchAroo. And in fact, we are having Lawson on our January 28th episode. He came on and talked about the wonderful Chibi Robo. But so the past couple of years, Mike and I, my co-host, we've been friends since kindergarten, and we are striving to research and review and playfully rib every retro game available on Nintendo Switch Online. And so that's the premise of our show. But there's just a lot that you also get with that membership that it's weird and people don't really know like that it exists, and Nintendo doesn't seem to know what to do with it. It's very frustrating. Like, I'm not a parent, but I imagine it's like if you had a child who you knew had potential because they're very clever, like when they're not in the classroom. That's what it must feel like.
Yeah, it seems like a lot. Why make a podcast about this in particular, as opposed to just anything else?
I mean, yeah, because there's no shortage of retro gaming podcasts. But what Mike and I think kind of makes our show unique is that this is maybe the only podcast show on the internet where you could play along with any game they're talking about without having to resort to exorbitant eBay bids or illegal emulation. You know, because like let's say I did a show about Netflix, right? Like there's podcasts about Netflix content, but that library is constantly rotating things in and out. So if you're catching up on an episode, you may be like, "Oh, I'd love to watch that show they were talking about." It's not on Netflix anymore. Nintendo Switch Online doesn't do that. Once a game is on there, with one very weird exception, it's on there forever. So if you like the idea of listening to gaming shows, but you wish it was easier to play along, Nintendo Switch Online is probably your most affordable option.
Probably, unless of course you own every game ever made, or you happen to loot a GameStop when one of them shut down.
I mean, even if you looted a GameStop, though, like there's rare games on here. And I think that's one of the real appeals of the service is that, like, I mean, I used to be a Game Pass subscriber, and that was great for accessing all of these new games people are talking about. And I could kind of be part of the conversation, for relatively, affordable monthly fee. But Nintendo Switch Online, I mean, again, not to sound like too much of a shill, but it's crazy inexpensive. The baseline is $20 a year. A year. I paid more for Xbox Live every month. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And then even if you do go for the pricier options like the expansion pack thing, which we'll talk about, it gets you a lot more content, but you can still do a family plan for $80 a year, and that's up to 8 people. So it could still translate to less than $10 a year if you have a little bit of a group. I don't know. It's weird because it's so stinking affordable, and I think that's because so much of the service isn't very good. And so if Nintendo created a really good product, they'd probably charge us more for it. So I'm very hesitant to promote this too much.
Okay, so why does it suck? Because again, I assume. So, how many games are on there first? Like, how many
Oh
games are
man,
on the service?
a lot, a lot. So you got Nintendo. I mean, you want me to break it down here? We got,
Break it down.
Nintendo. NES 92 games, SNES 85, Game Boy 36, Nintendo 64. Now we're in the expansion pack tier where you got to pay a bit more a year. Expansion pack 38 games for Nintendo 64, 5 games on the Nintendo 64 Mature, or as I like to call it, Nintendo 64 After Hours. Lawson,
Oh,
did you know they have a special app just for the adult games?
is it adult? It's adult games in that there's probably some more violence, right? Like,
It's so funny. It's so Nintendo. They're so protective of children that they had to create an entirely separate app for the M-rated N64 games. There's only 5 in there right now, and yeah, it's all violence. But I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Conker's Bad Fur Day, but that was like the original naughty console game, and that, that would fit right home on the mature app.
Yeah,
So
Conker's Bad Fur Day, listener, is a game about it's sort of like making fun of Banjo Kazooie. What if Banjo was instead a squirrel that cursed, drank, and really liked sex?
yeah,
Um,
and it's very 90s, like Ren and Stimpy. Like one character is this, probably the most famous side character is like the Great Mighty Pooh, and he's like the singing pile of turd. It's like there's zero class, but it's really fun. It's a fun curio in the Nintendo history. And then I got Game Boy Advance 28 games, Sega Genesis 53, GameCube 8. So I asked AI for what's this worth, and I don't know how much you should trust it, but like, how much would it cost if you just had access to all these games? If I bought all of these or off eBay, what would it run me, consoles included? And
mhm.
I think it was like 15 grand to get everything. And you take that value and put it down to, just $50 a year or whatever, tier you might be choosing. It's pretty great. So the reason why it doesn't suck. First of all, you said, why does it suck? No, there's things that suck about it.
Mhm.
But I'm a huge fan overall, and I wish more people were enjoying it.
Yeah, but where are its pain points at? Like, what are these things that like would cause people to not enjoy the service?
It's
Because it
not
does sound
it
like a pretty good like, "Hey, cool. I buy that for my brother for a year or whatever, and he gets to play a bunch of games, and sounds like a pretty good Christmas gift or something,"
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. The pain point is seeing the potential of what this could be. So like one of the biggest things holding the service back is that all of these games are playable online. That's the other cool thing too. I
Mhm.
go to Best Buy and I got a Super Nintendo Classic. That's a really cool thing for my living room, but people have to come over to play it with me. But for all of these games that Mike and I are working through our podcast, like we just did Tecmo Bowl, the old, NES 1980s football game, and it's online play. All of these games are online play because it essentially is just plugging in a controller. If you can imagine the cord going through the internet, so Mike is just player two, and there's no like servers. It's running off of my Switch. I forget what that term is.
Mhm.
But you know, that means that in order to play these online games, you need to already be friends with each other. There's no online gaming against randos. But why? Like, because it's not like there's voice chat in these old NES games. Let me just boot it up and play Tecmo Bowl with anyone else who might happen to want to be my player too. What's the freaking harm with that, Nintendo? Why are you getting in your own way and not letting people just have a good experience? I don't know. They're so protective of what they want Nintendo to be as a brand and who they want their audience to be that they are just not getting with the times.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's a big thing with Nintendo is it feels like a lot of their UI and UX stuff is just from 20 years ago. So
20
they
20 years ago. Do you know what we just got with the Nintendo Switch 2, Lawson? What
what? What
feature?
what did you just get?
Okay, get ready. Prepare your body, listener, Lawson, okay? They have finally added voice chat.
And how bad is this voice chat?
It's great. It's awesome. First of all, it runs really well and it's fast and it's clear and it's crisp and it can pick you up from across the freaking room. Like they really like Nintendo when they do something, they tend to obsess over it quality wise to almost like a Disney like level.
Okay,
Um
so when they were announcing the voice chat for the Switch 2 in that Nintendo Direct, I remember watching the Direct and being like, even in this like pre-planned like demo thing, it sounds crunchy. So you're saying that it's really good actually?
Okay, for what I think it's trying to do, I think it's really good. You said it sounds crunchy. Well, you're being an audio editing guy, you know?
That is true.
I think for the average person like me, it's like if I'm playing a video game, I want most of my attention to kind of be on the quality of the game sounds, and then I'm not really thinking unless it's distracting. I mean, I guess it was distractingly bad for you. So yeah, full disclosure, the audio crispness, I don't know how good that is. I don't really care about that unless it's taking away from my enjoyment. But what it does that's really neat is that you can see each other's screens on the bottom of the Switch 2. Did you see that? The video chat option that's included?
Oh yeah, it did have that too, huh?
Yeah, and it's choppy, and it's not very smooth. And everyone joked about, oh my god, how bad is our connection? Oh, it's a flip book, and it's like, but I don't think this is meant to be a replacement for like Twitch. It's not
Yeah.
going to be that level of quality, and you're playing on the go potentially with the connection from your cell phone or whatever. Like, I think they chose stability of the game chat function over fidelity, and when it comes to a game chat, that's like what I would want. Um,
But it sounds very much like they are trying to, like, they notice that Discord exists and that people use Discord as their go-to for gaming chats now,
yeah.
because Discord is free. You can use it from basically any computer or your phone, and it works pretty well. But Nintendo wants to have its own ecosystem.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want it to be built in because I should I made a lot of friends just playing Street Fighter 3 on the Xbox, and I had voice chat turned on, and if someone was a dingus, I would just press a button and mute them. But it's you kind of make friends that way, and it's so funny. The reason it's taken Nintendo so long to get to voice chat is that they were very protective of children. They did not
Mhm.
want kids voice chatting with someone that they shouldn't be. And so like their solution is like, okay, it's family only, right? But when you make it so that I can't be paired with some random retro gamer, now to find people to play against, you are forcing me to go online and join discords and look at Reddits. Isn't that endangering kids more? Like you're kind of shunting them towards the internet. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because you can
Yeah.
only play with people on the friends list, and so it's like, okay, I got to get your 12-digit friend code, and that's still more or less a thing, so that's what's holding
The
it
fact
back.
that they have not updated that to a QR code
Oh, there's a QR
or
code. You can do a QR
okay,
code, but I just think that everyone did friend codes for so long that it kind of became synonymous with the crappy Nintendo online experience.
yeah.
And so yeah, but I mean there is an option. You can do it on the app, you can do it on the Switch, do a QR code. But I mean just even still regardless though, the fact that
Mhm.
with these retro games, what's the harm in letting me play, like I said, Tecmo Bowl with someone who can't even voice chat with me? It's not like they're gonna throw the football in an inappropriate way and scandalize. You know what I mean? Like there's only so much you can do in these old games.
Yeah, but again, they wanna keep everyone safe, but
I
it's
get it.
also it's also 2026,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
should be noted, there are easier ways to do a lot of this stuff.
Well, it's also just out of touch with the consumer base, at least in Western audiences. I can't speak for how it is in
Mhm,
Japan, but like all of my students are on Roblox, and they are chatting with randos on the daily in Roblox.
mhm.
Like I don't think that by refusing to offer this, I don't think anyone's being saved. I think Nintendo is just afraid of a lawsuit. And I don't know, maybe since they are the family, gaming brand, maybe they would be more affected by something that's bad for their image. But it's just one of the many things and that's holding them back. The game chat too, Lawson, I'm not sure aware. There's a button for it on the Switch too, right? Well,
Mhm.
that button don't work unless you subscribe to Nintendo Switch Online. You can't voice chat unless you pay a yearly fee. So people are like, is that the first button in gaming history that has a price tag?
I mean, basically, well, in gaming history, I do know that they've been trying to sell people on like cars with certain paywalled functions. Like, oh, hey, do you want seat warmers? Well, you're gonna need to subscribe to Ford Plus, and
Yeah,
then you
it's
can get seat warmers. And but then
freaking weird.
there's a separate subscription for seat coolers, which is just like heaters, but the opposite.
It's so gross. They've microtransactioned everything about our lives. And that is what is interesting though, is that almost with no exception, there's one weird outlier, but Nintendo Online games resist microtransactions. Splatoon would be a hugely successful free to play shooter online. And because it's very cosmetic based, you're constantly unlocking new outfits and new soundtracks and new shoes and new decals, and all of that could just be sold, and we would make so much money. But they continue to release one game every couple years for like $80, and that's all the money they take from you. In fact, I got bullied off of Reddit for suggesting that they do a free to play Splatoon just because people were that adamant that it would destroy the quality of it.
Well, yeah, at the end of the day, if you want to make a game like that, you do need to fill it with microtransactions in order to pay the developers, because free games only work if you have a large player base who then go and buy your stuff.
But like F-Zero 99, for example, we covered that on
Mhm,
the second season, oh, third season of our show.
mhm.
And that is a game with a very popular, as of this moment right now, a very popular player base. There are no microtransactions, and somehow it keeps getting new content, and it's still supported. And it's just like, wow, Nintendo, you cannot be making a lot of money off of that, but you keep this game running. Same thing with like Tetris 99. Tetris 99, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's the Tetris Battle Royale, and it's fan freaking tastic. And every month they get new
Mhm.
skins for the new Nintendo game that came out, and it's just free forever. So
But
it's weird.
how do they make money through it though? Because
I
it is
don't.
a is F-Zero 99 only accessible through this Nintendo Switch Online?
Yeah, they I guess they're technically making money through subscriptions, but as we discussed, they don't charge that very much a year, and so it's just
That's
it's very
true, but for F-Zero 99, you have to have, the ability to play, like, with other people online, right? And isn't that its own thing aside from just the catalog?
no, it's included.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that like you get the catalog and you get all these games as service games and you get expansion packs and you get access to the weird Nintendo music thing. Like there's a lot of little bells and whistles, and you do a gaming podcast, but you didn't know that that was all part of the same deal. So Nintendo, what's holding it back? What sucks about Nintendo Switch Online is just Nintendo just does not know how to package this and present it to people. Um because it's pretty cool.
Well, I think the real thing is that they are competing with emulation,
Yeah.
which for a lot of people is more viable. You can emulate all kinds of games even on your phone.
Yeah.
And the question is it easier to do this than to emulate a game on your phone or on your computer?
I mean, I really think it depends on who you are. I don't know what percentage of gamers actually, engage in emulation. I would guess
Yes.
it's actually a pretty small percentage. I think the vast majority of customers buy a thing and play games on the thing, and if it's not on the thing, they go, "Ah, that sucks." You know? Um And I don't know. Like, I mean, I've had my identity stolen before, so I am irrationally afraid of viruses and identity theft. So I really like having access to all of this, legitimately and stress free, and just recommending it to anybody.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. The it's just strange that you know that is potentially what's also holding it back because, like you said, you can emulate almost any of these retro games, probably all of them actually.
Yeah,
Um,
and even more because as you mentioned, there are double digit numbers of games available on the service for like every console, but more than that number of games came out for those consoles. So hey, like you mentioned, like how many were there are there for the GameCube?
GameCube currently has 8, and we know we're getting at least up to like over a dozen this year. So, and that's another thing you could say is maybe holding the service back is that they drip feed us games. And they don't do it consistently. It's not like here's the new game of the week. They could do that. They release over like
Mhm.
56 games every year. So they could just make a game of the week and just have us look forward to that. But instead they hold back and then burst all at once and like do like 8 game drops. But then like I think, our friend at Defunct Games, he keeps track of all these things. And I think he said that like last year for the Sega Genesis, they added 2 games for the whole year. So
Mhm.
like having no idea what to expect makes it hard to recommend. Because, like, what if I subscribe to this because I'm a Sega fan and you give me freaking nothing? It doesn't seem like there's a rhyme or reason to what they are, adding to it. But something that this has that emulation I don't think can potentially easily match is some of the quality of life things. I mean, of course, emulation has save states, but these games also have rewind, like a easy rewind function. And probably the coolest thing they did for a couple of years was the SP mode. Are you familiar with that?
I know that there was the Game Boy SP, which I had at one point, and I was like, this is I don't like that it claps. I'm worried that I'm going to snap this in half.
Yeah, it's like the little folding thing. No, SP mode stands for special mode. And so what it was that for the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo games, those were the only systems available for the first couple of years of this service.
Mhm.
You could boot up a special version of the game, and it was like the equivalent of renting a game from Blockbuster Video, and a bunch of stuff is already unlocked on the cartridge. Or you are sitting in the room with your older brother and he gets you to the final boss and passes you the controller. It was special versions of the game that had save data or save points that were super famous. Like for example, Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden is a game that is notoriously difficult, but you could boot up and go straight to the last boss if you just want to see what this legendary final boss is really like and just how unfair it is. And it's this really cool, really unique function that they have completely forgotten about. And I want to put this out in the universe as much as possible. Nintendo, okay? You listening, Nintendo? If you return this service, I will get an SP mode tattoo on my body to commemorate it, okay? I want to get ink, so bring it back, Nintendo.
The best way it could compete with emulation is to have features like that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
emulation is, 99% of the time pretty bare bones. Congratulations, you can now play X game with a controller at home, but there's no quality of life things. And that's the best way to, get people in the door. Hey, cool. Would you like to play this old game, but you have these quality of life features? That's a much easier sell than, hello, would you like to spend more money on games that came out 30 years ago?
right. And I think the biggest missed opportunity is the controller recreations. Because via Nintendo's website, if you subscribe to their online service, you can order, to scale, fully working recreations of almost all of the systems on the service. But there's ordering restrictions, like you can only order one GameCube controller right now, which is a real bummer because they have some really good two-player games like Soul Calibur 2 on the service right now, but if my friend Brian comes over, he can't also have a GameCube controller cuz I could only buy one. Now that is due to like freaking tariffs and like limited supplies and all that stuff. That one's a little out of their control. But like for the Nintendo 64 controller, which has been available for a very long time now, you can only order 4. And you're thinking, okay, well, JMO, they only have 4-player games. Why would you need number 5? Well, what if I freaking break one? Or what if I drop it, like, or lose it? So just that is a restriction that's a big bummer, but it's such a missed opportunity that these are not in stores. They should be selling these controller recreations with a free membership to Nintendo Switch Online. Nintendo Switch Online should actually be a smart TV app that is not connected to the console. And anyone could buy these controllers at Walmart, take it home, and subscribe immediately. They would make so much money, wouldn't they, Lawson?
I mean, yeah, especially considering how much RAM a lot of these games take.
Yeah,
Like, my TV, I think, has 2 gigs of RAM in it because we
yeah,
live in the era of smart things. But 2 gigs of RAM is far more than enough for, like, an SNES game.
yeah, 100%. It's people are don't realize just how small these file sizes used to be. Like I remember we talked about the biggest Nintendo game, NES game of all time, and it was like 1 megabyte. Like it was
Yeah.
so yeah, it would be so easy to like stream this via a smart TV. You don't need I mean, with some exceptions, like for example, N64, you can only rewind on the Switch too, because I guess it is actually a bit more processing to constantly be saving the game and letting you rewind to any point in your gameplay. I guess that's some kind of hardware intensive. Um, but yeah, it just seems like Nintendo, if it got away from the idea of you have to just buy this console and it just made it more modern. I mean, it should be on smartphones. You should be able to
Yeah.
play with touch controls. Like these are the kind of business decisions that it's just Nintendo will just not get with the program. They just won't get out of their own way, you know?
Yeah. I was looking at file size. Okay, that can't be right. Someone said that when the original Wind Waker was okay, no, the original Wind Waker is like 1.3 gigs. No, it was
Yeah.
1.13 gigabytes.
Yeah.
That easily can fit on a phone. It may
Yeah.
not fit in a TV, but it can, maybe on a newer TV than mine, because mine's like 6 years old. But hey, that is, and assuming that Wind Waker is one of the fancier ones for the GameCube, which is the most recent console that they're, offering games for, you could very easily make that work. Or
Yeah.
you could partner with like uh an Nvidia type service, and then you could play those games remotely
Right.
and have all the processing be done elsewhere, which would be super cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's just like this is the frustration of Nintendo Switch Online is that you lay there in bed being like, "Oh, what if Nintendo could actually be as big as, they should be?" Um, so I last night I made a mini game minute for you. You want to play with me?
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
So a part of my show, the Old Switcheroo, is that we always try to get little trivia and mini games as often as possible. I can't always fit it in or think of one, but Lawson and I were talking about you can buy these game controller recreations. Um, so you are gonna play Mary Flick Kill. And the
All
way that
right.
because I was bummed for a second. Part of the reason I was late to recording is that I wanted to, work this out, and I was so sad because I thought we had an even number, and then I realized a workaround. So I'm going to show Lawson 3 different controllers, and he's going to pick which one to marry, his favorite controller, which one he'd just flick the sticks around a little bit, and which one he'd kill his least favorite. So we will delete the kills. We will move the winners up to the final bracket. So the first one, Lawson, got 3 of the 3 controller configurations at the base price. You have NES, Super NES, and the Game Boy. Which one is your marry? Which one's your flick around? And which one's your kill?
Hmm. I'm
And if
gonna
you
have so which one is the furthest left?
the,
On the far right, I have so the Game Boy is Mary for sure.
okay,
Because
that's your fave of these 3.
I have a lot of nostalgia for the Game Boy and sitting in the back of my parents' car on the way home from school playing Game Boy.
Okay, so that's your favorite controller of these original 3.
Of the original three, yes.
Okay, so then which one you kill, an NES or SNES?
NES.
Ah.
That it it's only got the D-pad. It only has 2 buttons, and I understand that it is the same as the Game Boy, but the Game Boy, you got the game with you.
Yeah, pretty great, pretty great. Yeah, I wasn't always a fan of the NES controller. It didn't really age well. One thing that was kind of neat though is that these controllers would actually slot onto the side of the original Switch. So,
Oh,
yeah, it plugged in where the Joy-Cons plugged in, and it looked pretty cool. 2 little NES controllers hanging off the side. But, that also means that it's kind of frustrating on Switch 2 because now those are magnets, and I wish they would release a new version that was magnetic. That'd be pretty neat. Okay, so killing the NES, so SNES, you just flick the sticks around a little bit. We moved Game Boy onto the final
it,
round.
it's it's fine. It's not my favorite, but the SNES controller looks like a controller I could give to a child and they would get it. You know?
Yeah, and it also deserves a lot of credit for being like, the shoulder buttons, the controller that kind of made that standard. They didn't really use them as much as they should have. But the
Yeah.
layout of 4 face buttons, 2 shoulder buttons, that went a long way towards modernizing controller design.
For baby's first game, I'd say like baby's first years of gaming, that's great because you don't have to worry about analog sticks.
So let's move into the expansion pack. And that's the weird thing too, is that you have these 2 tiers of Nintendo Switch Online, but there's more systems in the expansion pack than the baseline. So like At what point does the expansion pack become the base of this pyramid? You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's like if they released StarCraft expansion and the expansion was legit bigger than. I mean, I guess games do that all the time, but you see my point. Okay, so then the first three systems of the expansion pack: Sega Genesis controller, 3 button, and then N64 controller and the GameCube controller. What's your marry? What's your flick? And
I'm
what's your kill?
marrying the GameCube controller because it's made
Ooh,
for human hands. Um,
it does have a good form factor.
uh, the Sega Genesis controller, I'm going to flick around because it has three face buttons instead of 2 or 4, which is weird. Um,
Wait, so are you killing the N64 controller?
I'm killing the N64 controller because I don't have 3 hands.
Well, you
I only ha-
understand.
I only have 3 hands. That is a control the Nintendo 64 controller is meant for like some species that has 3 hands
You
or 2 hands and a prehensile tail.
you
How do you
you know
control
that.
that?
Well, so you just okay. Look at the screen, Lawson. You just pick which of the two prongs you're holding, right? So if you're playing a 2D game, you hold on to the left and the right because you don't need the joystick, right? Imagine that middle prong is just not there. If you're doing 3D games, you hold on to the left and the right. So you got move Mario with the joystick and jump with the face buttons. And then there is actually a really cool game we covered on season 2 of our show called Sin and Punishment. And it was one of the first dual stick games, but instead of two controllers or two analog sticks, excuse me, you hold on to the left and middle. And so you are moving with the D-pad, you are aiming with the joystick, and you are firing with the back buttons. So
That
I
sounds like a nightmare for my hands. So I'm going to kill the
blasphemy.
Nintendo 64 controller. I'm
I
sorry.
thought
I would love to stick it on the end of a pole and use it as a trident, but I
no,
don't want to play
okay.
games with it.
Oh man, you're harsh. I thought for sure you're gonna kill the Genesis controller because like the 3 buttons laid out horizontally, it's really weird that like you gotta kind of slide your thumb. Most controllers you can roll your thumb to one button or the other,
Yeah.
but this
It
one
look
you're doing.
I can't say that I would enjoy flicking around the Genesis controller. The Genesis controller does not look great to play on, but having tried to use the N64 controller, I would rather have at least the Genesis one doesn't gonna stab me in the stomach.
And I will also add that I bought for Christmas a couple years ago. I got Mike the 6 button Switch Genesis controller, which is only available in Japan for some reason. There are 11 games that would make great use of the 6 button Genesis controller, and some of them are borderline unplayable when mapped to a modern Switch Pro controller configuration. Street Fighter 2 in particular, I'm thinking of. The button layout that you have to use for that is truly insane on a pro controller. So I don't know why they didn't just go straight to the 6 button one. I guess it's because this is the more iconic looking one, but that always frustrated me. Okay. So final round. We got Game Boy Advance, um, the Virtual Boy, or Virtual Boy Cardboard Edition. Austin, are you familiar with the Virtual Boy?
I'm mildly familiar. It was VR before we really knew what VR was, and I believe it spawned. People saw the Virtual Boy, and they're like virtual reality, and then there were a lot of movies made with that concept that never actually touched the Virtual Boy.
Yeah, the Virtual Boy wasn't the first quote unquote VR headset, but it was the first and only one that Nintendo made for a long time until they released the Labo set. The Labo is the really cool Switch franchise. They've only had a couple of entries so far, but you build unique controllers out of cardboard. And so there was a really cool one where you put your Switch in a cardboard VR goggle headset and then you held it up to your face. And the games you were playing were very rudimentary and very bare bones. But it was still, I thought it was neat. So they
It
are
was an
adding,
era of novelty of, oh hey, why can't we just make goggles for your game? And then they're like, oh, because it's not comfortable. But instead of focus group testing it, they were like, let's just do it.
well, and also though that goes back to Nintendo always looking out for kids because it's not good for really young eyes to be in VR for that long. So I think they also didn't want to make it too comfortable. They want you to get tired holding it up so that you take breaks. Old Nintendo games are infamous for that. We just covered Earthbound on my show for season 4, and literally every 2 hours, you get a call from your dad asking if you want to stop playing. Like Nintendo very much has always been very protective of the health of their young fan base, for better or for worse. But so when this is released on the Switch Online this year expansion pack tier, you have two options to play it. You can buy the $100 adapter, which will hold it up, holds the visor up on a what's that called?
Stand.
Tripod? Yeah, tripod stand. And then you just put on the, you got to find a coffee table or a desk or something. You can't really play this in your living room, but you stick your face in it. But for $25, so $75 cheaper, you can build your own and just hold it up to your face. But some of these games like are known to be pretty good, and so they'll take hours to beat. So those are your three options. Marry, Flick, Kill, Game Boy Advance, Virtual Boy, or Virtual Boy Cardboard.
I should note, listen, the Virtual Boy Cardboard noticeably has the Switch controllers on either side of it, so it looks like you'd have to play it with it up against your face and
Yeah.
clacking the buttons next to your head.
Yeah,
And the
you are
Virtual
pressing the
Boy,
buttons as if you're playing with your earmuffs.
yes. And the regular Virtual Boy is you have a controller in your hands and then your face is in the Virtual Boy. So honestly, I'm personally kind of offended you did not offer me the Wii.
The Wii's
Because
not on the service.
well, I personally believe that the Wii is one of the weirdest things ever made. Um,
We're gonna get it. There's no doubt we're gonna get Wii games one day because the motion sensing Joy Cons are essentially more accurate than Wiimotes used to be. I have zero doubt that Wii will be added to the Switch 2
I
within its
cannot,
lifespan.
of course, now that all of my grandparents have passed away, now they're gonna be bringing the Wii back. Great.
I mean, and it's again, it's something that Nintendo just doesn't know how to advertise. I don't know if you know this, but there was a Wii Sports sequel on the Switch called Nintendo Switch Sports, and it's fantastic. And they did not advertise it, even though Wii Sports was one of the defining games of that console generation. Um, they just don't know how to how to succeed. So let's wrap up the game, Lawson. You got a
All right. Oh
controller
man.
configuration to flick and marry
I
and
mean,
kill.
definitely kill the Virtual Boy Cardboard because
Yeah,
that's got to be that cannot feel good on my head.
brutal.
Um, I am gonna say probably flick the regular Virtual Boy simply for the novelty of it, and then marry the GBA because again, in the GBA, like it is a lot of sentimentality for it to me. Because again, I played a lot of Game Boy Advance because it had that nice like backlit screen, and you could
Yeah.
actually like you
Well,
could
the
play
SP
it
did.
at night. I mean, the SP did, but the SP is not on this list. We have the regular original Game Boy with no backlighting, so you would have to, if you wanted to play it at night, you'd have to like get a flashlight, shine at the screen, and then play,
Pretty
or
insane.
buy one of those weird little flashlight extender things to go over the top and shine down on it. But GBA, you could have under the covers, you could be playing Pokemon there all day because it was backlit.
Yeah, yeah, GBASP. Okay, so then that means the final round. One more Mary Flick kill. I know these are your top contenders, so you don't want to kill any of them. But which is the best controller configuration? The original Game Boy, the Game Boy Advance, or the GameCube? Where's Lost and Hearts go? Kill one.
Hmm. I have to kill original Game Boy.
Third place. All right.
Sorry, buddy. You die.
I mean, it's got real
Simply
basic
because
and
well, I mean, the big thing for me is that the original Game Boy was beaten out by the Game Boy Advance in basically every way when it came to form factor, how easy it was to control, um, just the fact that I watched the Sonic the Hedgehog TV show on GBA.
yeah, they had
So
little shows on the cartridges. Those was fun.
yeah, they had 3 episodes to a cartridge, and it was the fact that I can say, "Oh, yes, I used to watch a TV show on my Game Boy Advance, but it only had 3 episodes at a time," I think is breaking someone out there that's listening to this. But that
Yeah,
is
these.
the world that I grew up in, and now
Yep,
I can watch all of Game of Thrones on my phone.
on your
Um,
smartwatch.
as Nolan intended, I can watch Dunkirk on my Apple smartwatch.
Yeah. Okay, so then that leaves the Game Boy Advance and GameCube.
Game Boy Advance is gonna be number 2.
All right, flick
Because
around.
I do like the trigger buttons, but I gotta say, the GameCube had the best games, and also it feels the best in my hands, and there is something to be said about the way that the GameCube controller is set up, wherein the A button, which is the button you will be using all of the time, is the biggest, and all of
Yeah,
the buttons feel, like, distinct on your fingers, because the A button's the biggest, the B button is smaller, and it's the smallest button on the controller. You have the X and the Y buttons, which are both curves, but they're specific parts of a curve. So, like,
yeah,
each of them you can tell by, touch which button they are. Meanwhile, on the current Switch controllers, on Xbox controllers, on, PlayStation controllers, it doesn't really matter. They're all just round, smooth buttons, which are basically interchangeable. And on the one hand, that's great, but
it's interesting the idea of having one giant button. It's like it's a way for the developer to communicate what the primary action of the game is. So
yes,
for most platformers, that would of course be the jump button. But then for brawler games, it's like your main attack, or for a space shooter game, it's your fire button. And there's no real way on the modern controllers to communicate to the customer what action is the most important unless they kind of just intuit it from the tutorials, I guess. And it also was really famous for the analog triggers. So, the current or a lot of triggers controllers, it's like you press it or you don't. The GameCube one though had this varying degree. So like in Super Mario Sunshine, you have this water tank on your back, and you could squirt out a little bit of water by just barely pulling the trigger, and then if you pull it all the way down, the water will gush out stronger. So it had a lot of cool little things to it, and it's also the de facto Smash Brothers controller because Melee, I think, is still regarded by fans as the best in the series. I'm personally an Ultimate stan myself.
I
But
I okay, I have a hard opinion here. I
you
don't
like
think
Brawl the best?
Melee's that I I listen, Brawl was fine. Brawl's
Okay.
story mode was the best,
Yeah.
but that's not really a question, that's more of just fact.
Well,
Um,
I mean, I feel like Ultimate's single player mode was actually way cooler. The giant board game. I remember the single player mode in Smash Brawl took forever to beat, and it had like really, really long playtime.
Subspace Emissary. I
Crazy.
liked it because there are many reasons that I enjoyed it. Um, I'd say the biggest one is it is essentially what the campaign of a Call of Duty game is, but to Smash Brothers instead. Because when you're playing the campaign in like a first person shooter, you are learning the controls, you're learning the techniques, and you're learning all of the guns. Subspace Emissary was like, all right, cool. We are going to take you and we are going to force you to learn how to play with a bunch of different characters and figure out how they all work. It may have not been even, but it was for sure interesting. And I liked the board game aspect. That was, you know, fine of Ultimate, but Subspace Embassy also was just really weird and had like a wordless storyline, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, kind of like those Lego games.
Yeah, I think that's good. But I am also someone who's like, yes, give me a weird story because even if the story is weird and bad, I would rather have that than no story at all.
Yeah. So, what's your hot take?
Oh, I don't think Melee is that good. I think
Oh,
Melee is just it's the first like fighting game those people really learned, and so it
yeah.
became like the thing on the pedestal. And you know, just like when I do photography sometimes, everyone's favorite camera ecosystem is the one they started with because yes, of course you like Nikon or Canon or whatever the best because that's what you have all the gear for. It's what you're used to. There's no way to say this is empirically the best. It's just
Yeah, I mean,
preference.
for the one Melee stan listening who's vomiting blood right now, like I will give them, that there's certain things about that game that I think has aged incredibly well, and there's certain high level techniques that weren't even necessarily intended by the developers that people discovered over time and kind of made the game retroactively better through their expertise. So I would almost see it as like someone who's arguing like acoustic versus electric guitar. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you said, there's not really one right answer. But yeah, I also think, well, they're gonna add Smash Brothers Melee to the GameCube app on Nintendo Switch Online. And again, if you could play against randos, that would be huge because there's a huge base of people who just want to play that game with random people. But again, to play it competitively on Nintendo Switch Online, I'm gonna have to go to Discord, and I'm gonna have to join a Smash Brothers thing, and I'm gonna have to talk to,
But
like,
here's the thing, JMO, are they going to update the code in any ways? Because a lot of the things about games like Melee and games from that era that people play competitively is the very specific glitches that exist in those versions of the game.
yeah.
If you think about, speed running Ocarina of Time, they're not gonna you don't want to do it with the remake, you want to do it with the old version where you can do incredibly weird broken stuff.
I was gonna say, like the code, it's the same code. Like the glitches in Nintendo Switch Online are still fully intact. They didn't they didn't try to like fix things that players discovered. Although interestingly, in some cases though, games have been changed. Like so for example, Tecmo Bowl when it was released on the NES, it had this really cool cutscene where you saw the helmets of like fictional teams and it would name the players because they had the rights to use player names. But after Tecmo Bowl was released back in the 80s, a football player named Eric Dickinson sued Nintendo for likeness rights, saying he didn't get compensated enough for his likeness in the 8-bit, what, half a megabyte NES game. He sued for likeness rights, but the argument was that his stats represented who he was. So that was essentially still him on the field, and he thought he deserved more money. But all that's to say, though, that Nintendo was so paranoid of getting sued again that when this was released on the Wii Virtual Console and when it was re released on the Nintendo Switch Online service, they removed that cutscene. So, with rare exception, the code is exactly how it appeared, but like that's one example where they went back and changed something.
Yeah. I still personally believe that they still might have changed some things because also again, if I remember correctly, there are certain things you can do in Melee, but only with certain broken GameCube controllers. And it's
Oh.
a manufacturing flaw that came up in like one out of every 50 controllers that you need to do like specific things in Melee. Yeah.
I've not heard of that. That's interesting. It reminds me of when we covered an NES game, and I learned that the baseball game you can cheat by plugging your controller partially, and it just
Mm.
it confused the game to the point that you could do a super slow ball, and you could pitch it, and it would take like a good 30 seconds to reach the pitcher or the catcher. Excuse me. Yeah, it's just a different era. Everything that's so streamlined. It's kind of fun to think back on a more on a more primitive age, and that's what my show's all about.
Well, I have probably a very good important question that we can
Mm,
end on.
okay.
At what point should games become public domain?
I mean, right? So I mean, with cartoons and movies, it's 100 years, right?
Because of the meddling by Disney to go through and like every time it got close to expiring, Disney kept extending it for like 30 years.
Yeah.
And it's only recently that we're starting to make that happen. I'm saying agnostic of American copyright law because we don't need to go into American copyright law for any reason ever again. Uh, at what point do you think games should be public domain?
I think that question is really complicated. And I think that this is part of like why we get in so much trouble as a culture, as a society. I'm gonna go political for a second here, Lawson.
Oh
But
god.
like
Oh no, games as culture, as politics, it's all a singularity of truth.
I just think that when people deal in absolutes like a Sith would do, right? And they say this is the right way and this is the wrong way and I'm not going to listen to you. I think that's where it starts to break down. I really genuinely believe that. So regarding the public domain decision, right? The freewheeling artist in me wants it to be public domain very quickly so people can create things and they can make fan things and everyone can just make stuff and whatever stuff is the best will be what sells the best. And that's wonderful, right? But then I also live in the reality of just really liking the Nintendo brand and really appreciating how long they've been putting out quality Mario games and quality Metroid games and going to the freaking Universal theme park and having so much fun there. And I don't know if that level of consistent quality would be happening if they weren't protective of their IPs and their brands and I guess their bottom dollar. Um so I guess I really am a shill for Nintendo. Um
Hey, that is fine. You literally came onto the pod and you led with, "I'm gonna be a shill for Nintendo Switch Online here."
I mean, I did say quite a few of the things that frustrate me about the service, but um I I guess I would just match it with whatever anything else is because I think this is all entertainment, you know? But then it becomes a weird thing of like, well, if a movie is public domain, right, you can watch it easily, but are we then going to let people recreate consoles? You know, like, can you just make and sell a Super Nintendo that I built myself? Like, I think with gaming needing the consoles and the controllers to access it, it's a bit more complicated. I don't know how it changes my
Yeah.
answer though. I don't know if it, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think that I'd say 50 years is probably a good demarcation. It's long enough that, all right, cool, you have this IP and it can have a full life, but then at a certain point, you need to let go.
Okay. So you think like Mario, right? Mario was a product of what, the 80s, I think, wasn't it? When did that game come out?
Uh, when did Mario come
Oh,
out?
we're coming up on the 40-year anniversary.
So even with my 50-year timeline, we would still have like another decade of Mario.
Yeah.
And I
So
think after another decade of Mario, I think it would be fine to just like, cool, you guys have another shot at it. Go off,
yeah,
have
and
fun.
I will say one more thing I didn't get to say about what sucks about Nintendo Switch Online. Justice for Super Mario 35. Are you familiar with that one?
I'm not familiar at all.
Battle Royale, free to play. It was 30. It was for Mario's 35th anniversary, and 35 players simultaneously were running through a Mario level. And when you would kill an enemy, like you jumped on a Goomba, it would send a Goomba to an opponent. And what ended up
Hmm.
happening was that the last few players would have hordes of enemies on the screen to a point that it was almost comical. And and you won by reaching the flagpole first or being the last one alive. It was super wacky, it was super neat, and it was only up for a year and then they pulled it and they haven't brought it back. And it's just like, why? Why not? You're supporting these other things indefinitely. I think they're going to do another one. I think they're going to do Super Mario 40 and they're going to make it like themed to the Mario 2 or something. I don't know what they're going to do. But I have faith it's coming back, but it's just really frustrating when a really cool idea gets taken down and you just have to I mean, it's fun to talk about, but it's more fun to play.
Yeah. And again, I think they're honestly like, part of me is like, okay, cool. Maybe it should be even a little shorter than 50 years. But 50 years, I'd say, is the like conservative answer. Because yeah, you know, I think that in the same way that, oh hey, Disney is like, okay, cool, well, Winnie the Pooh is public domain, but Winnie the Pooh in the red shirt, now that's still ours. I think you could do stuff like that. And, then hey, cool, if people wanted to do, Super Mario 35, they could go do that. Right?
Yeah,
And then like, okay, cool. Well, 2-bit Mario or 8-bit Mario is public domain. And that's great. It means that Nintendo can still use them. It's just they don't have like, sole access to Mario at that point.
right. Yeah, because at some point, like Mario belongs to all of us, right?
It
Right,
well, yeah,
comrade.
that's that's the idea about copyright law to begin with. Like, at what point, hey, Sherlock Holmes, Dracula, those things are not like restrained to just that person anymore. They are embedded in culture,
Yeah.
right? And at what point, like, hey, cool, they are public domain in the sense that everyone is using them.
I guess it gets complicated to go because, like, if it's a publicly traded company and people own a piece of this company, and then it gets devalued because, some public domain thing like goes public, and now the company's worth less because anyone can make Mario. And that's where I say, like, it gets tricky. It gets
It gets tricky,
complicated.
but also it gives them, reason to be developing new franchises to take over.
That's true. But I
You know,
mean, you want to live in a world where there's no more Pokemon games? Like, come on, Lawson. What are you
I
trying to
I
do to
want to
Pikachu?
I want to live in a world where there's good Pokemon games.
I liked Sword and Shield. I
Listen,
did.
Sword and Shield was it was a cute game, but okay, honestly, the whole Pokemon conversation is its own separate thing. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people just they love Pokemon because they loved when they were 7. And they're like, "Why doesn't Pokemon make me feel like I'm 7 anymore?" It's because you're 40, my boy. You're
Right.
not gonna feel 7 years old again.
But then I think about, like, my friend Derek who got Pokemon ZA, which I'm told is
Mhm.
runs great on the Switch too, but it is busted. The chugs, the graphic is terrible on the Switch. And, you know, you should be able to pick up a Pokemon game and get a quality experience for the amount they're charging. So I do
Yeah.
know that Pokemon has had some dips in quality, but I'm a Sonic fan though. I'll put up with anything. Like, Sonic fans don't know how good they have it right now. There was a solid decade or two where it was rough to be a Sonic fan. We went through a lot of duds that have since
Mhm.
been reevaluated collectively, and now apparently they're cult classics, which is kind of validating but also frustrating. Like, I don't know
Eh,
if you know about Sonic '06?
I am well aware of Sonic history.
I
That
I
will
played
probably be
through.
the topic of a future episode.
Beautiful. I'll be a listener slash guest on that one.
Mm.
But just I played through that entire buggy ass game. It is broken in ways that you are not prepared for in regular retail release. And now people say, like, it's this classic, and oh my gosh, it's better than, like, Sonic Superstars, which is a new, much more functional, much more solid game. And it's like, yeah, I feel like sometimes people gaslight me with their fandom. And it's like, I remember how bad this game is. It's fine that you like Silver. He's a cool character, but we're having a discussion about the quality of an objectively broken game. Stop calling it peak Gen Z.
Yeah. I should point out that the public domain could also help things like Pal World exist. Now, I do think Pal World is not like an empirically good game. I do think that Nintendo being like using balls to capture creatures is copyrighted. I think that's bad.
Yeah. They're not
And
the first though.
they're not the first, but I do think that, cutting down that copyright law would help with that. And for my true final topic, it's I think it would also be important to help preserve gaming history.
Yeah.
Because the thing with Nintendo Switch Online that you've talked about is it's great to play a bunch of games from way back when. But that's only the games that they've chosen to have on the service. What about all of those other games that they chose not to have on the service that are, you know, the more modern day equivalent of shovelware? Don't those games deserve to be, preserved as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything should be preserved. I think because otherwise you lose a historical accuracy to what an era was like. And I think that, games that maybe haven't aged well or are problematic by today's standards, I think absolutely needs to still be assessed and analyzed and discussed, if nothing else from an academic standpoint. Um, and that is a funny, also kind of a sticking point with Nintendo Switch Online, is that people almost get offended when certain games aren't on there. Like Batman on the NES, fantastic side scroller. I bought it on the Virtual Console. I'm still using the same Nintendo account since the days of the Wii. Nintendo knows I bought it. Can't play it on my Switch because it's not part of Nintendo Switch Online, even though I purchased digital rights to it back in the day.
Mm.
And so as sincerely as I think that Nintendo Switch Online is one of the best deals in gaming, if for no other reason than its affordability, right? We're talking a nickel a day. Nothing
Yeah.
is 20 bucks a year. To be free is like a dollar a month, you know? So 20 bucks a year, but still people always have something to say about what game isn't on there. Um, which I guess is nice. I guess that means that preservation is important to people. Um, so yeah, I would be sad to see things like that fade off because Nintendo is so protective. I do definitely agree. From a preservation standpoint, it's a dang good point.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I think it's a great service. It sounds like something that I would like to put my money into, but I do need to point out that there's a reason that emulation is still going to exist because what about the hundreds of games, maybe even thousands of games that are not on that service?
Yeah,
You know, all games should be protected in some way. And I do think that at a certain point, games should be accessible to everyone, you know, especially if it's been, like 40, 50 years since they came out. I don't think that Nintendo's going to be able to make $60 trying to sell Super Mario Brothers 64, you know.
yeah. I mean, Switch 2 edition of Breath of the Wild. How old is that game? Like 12 years, and it's like, oh, $70. It's like, whoo!
That's true. But like the original Super Mario Brothers, at that point, Super Mario 1 is just part of popular culture now,
I agree.
you know?
Yeah, totally.
All right. But yeah, with that, is there anything else you'd like to leave us with before we wrap this up?
Um, No, thank you for having me, Lawson. This was great. If anyone isn't sick of me, I would love if you came and checked out our show. We are the Old SwitchAroo, and that's AROO. So if you are interested in joining our little Discord community, Lawson's in there, and after every episode, we'll do little YouTube shorts, and we have a little channel for music discussions and just general. So if you're listening right now and you're a little bit lonely, www.theoldswitcharoo.com. Join up. We'd love to talk to you guys about old games and play along with our show. Be sure to check out Lawson's Chibi Robo episode, January 28th. That's going to be super fun. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. And listener, I do have something new to plug. The Super Wall Jump Discord. The link will be in the show description, I think, from now until the end of time. So please come in and talk about video games and have a cool place to talk about video games. Thank you so much for listening and have a great rest of your day or night or week or whatever. Bye.